first.
Yeah. Right, then we've got a few people who started to join. Hello, everyone who's joining. Depending on when you are joining us from, we can see you in the chat, so feel free to let us know where you're joining us from, maybe why you're here. I don't know if we've got any kind of friends or family who are joining us this evening. Also, sorry, feel free to have your mics off while we're waiting to get started to talk, so you don't have to sit in silence. I think we have lots of children joining us this evening who may or may not pop up on screen. So yeah, if you're also at home with your children, then I don't think that you're the only ones. Hi, Adam from York. And hi, James. Oh, hi from Nigeria as well. Very exciting. Hello, Simon from Solihull. We'll just give it a couple more minutes in case anybody else wants to join us and then get started. Right, 2 people joining us from York this evening, which I mean does make sense considering we've got so many people on our panel from York today. Right then, what do you think? Are you ready to get started? Brilliant. Right then, hello everyone. So I'm Kyaice from the Emma Press. I'm one of the publishing assistants, and I'm going to be hosting tonight's launch alongside Abi, who is the lovely editor of Blood and Cord, which published yesterday. Yes, yesterday. Make sure I get the date right. So I'll read a little bit from the blurb. I'm sure you'll hopefully all know all about the book, considering you're joining us this evening. So this is kind of a collection of short stories and poems and other forms of kind of fiction and literature that's all about parenthood, early parenthood, obviously, as the title tells us. And so there are lots and lots of really lovely poems about the really brilliant sides of parenthood, and some poems and short stories about the more challenging sides that often don't get talked about very much. I'm not a parent, so I'm really not the authority on the subject at all. So I think I'll pass over to Abi to do that side of things, if that's okay.
Thank you. So before we start, I have a potential saboteur in the room with me who's doing his best to create a disruption, but that's only fair because he's 3 and this book is about parenthood and it's complicated. And I think we do a lot in terms of pushing our children out of our professional and creative lives and trying to separate them. And in fact, a lot of what I'm interested in is trying to not to do that, actually, and to acknowledge the importance of them. So I'm going to read just a chunk of the intro by way of an introduction. And then we will hear from a number of amazing readers from the book. So these were people that were commissioned to write pieces especially for this volume, and they were commissioned by me with my knowledge of their writing, and knowing that they would do a really interesting job of this. So yeah, so I'm going to read a little bit of the introduction. The birth of a baby is like a comet crashing into your living room, like a door inside yourself opening up, like being inside a tempest. Becoming a new parent is one of life's greatest joys, and much of what we read and see on social media and in popular culture tells us so. Blooming mothers flushed with love, adoring, doting fathers, proud grandparents. But there is an unedited side to the story. It is also full of other emotions, some of them ambivalent, and this storm of emotions is often underportrayed. Becoming a parent can be a kind of unmaking of the self. You lose your old life in many ways, both physically and emotionally. From the intensity of birth to the strange hinterlands of sleepless nights, from the pain of baby loss to the ferocity of love, to the sensation of having allowed a being into your world that will change it forever. I hope you enjoy hearing from the book.
That was really brilliant. Thank you, Abi. Your introduction was the first thing that I read before I read anything else in the collection, obviously as it is in this, and I feel like it gave me such a brilliant understanding of everything else that was going to follow. And so I think that's a really great way for us to get started. So our first reader for this evening is Janice Bradbury, who teaches at the University of York, where she's a senior lecturer in contemporary writing and culture. And so, Janine, if you can join us and get reading.
Thank you. What a responsibility to be the first person to read a thing. I'm going to share 3 sonnets with you, so relatively short. And the first one makes a vague but not explicit reference to the traumas of parenthood and motherhood specifically associated with transatlantic slavery, just as a content note. So the first poem I'll read from the collection is called Meridian. There's a photo of us straddling time, our arms and legs outstretched, Vitruvian, parts of us spanning a line that cuts south to Accra, then Timor before sinking sub-aqua to where Drexian babes glide with no longing to be part of this world. I think of my belly, globed and marked dark, with its own longitude and you inside amniotic. You have mapped us a new cartography, where to hold is to love, and I tell you, once there was a great swell, and we were beached by sheer chance on this shore. Your dumpling feet will pad my silver stretch waves that marked my mother and her mother. This second sonnet is called Stranger Days, and it speaks a little bit to that ambivalence and almost alienation, I suppose, that early parenthood can often usher in. Stranger Days. How is she doing? She's out of this world. A truth I swaddle in plain sight, snug, wrapped in the cliches for love we're fluent in. See, they don't know that the first word you wrote was Jupiter, shaped as a question mark, eyes wide like E.T. pointing to heaven. Green men beep at the crossing. It is time to go home through the park where shadow leaves fall from the trees and spiked conkers hurtle like comets from heavy mother branches. Maybe I can keep you, learn from your ways. Your civilization is so advanced. You kiss my face. I know you came in peace. You beam away and I am left in pieces. And this final sonnet explores, I'm trying to think of a diplomatic way. I don't know why it needs to be diplomatic. It explores the politics of feeding your child. And it's called Jellyfish. Jellyfish. While gazing at a smack of moon jellies at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, my actual brain floats up through bone and glass and joins them, pulsing off towards bluish apparitions of things that used to sting, but now can soothe instead. My mother's hand, the properties of nettles, aloneness, your latch. The first one eased by amnesia, the last adaptation. I lactated cyborg milk like legions of cyborg mums, my spare parts cold, suspended in Milton come alive, this ecstasy of letdown. I don't know what natural means. I wish I could stretch its meaning like a jellyfish. Thank you.
That was brilliant, Janine. Thank you very much. Actually, if you could come back on, I had a question for you before you disappear, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course, sorry.
No, that was really great. I think there's something so much better about hearing poetry listened to rather than read. I'm not sure if everybody agrees with that. I feel like that's maybe controversial, but I love being able to actually hear somebody read it and knowing what you were kind of imagining as you were writing it. I actually wondered what your reason for writing them as sonnets were, if they just took that form, or if there was kind of specific thought that went into that.
Oh, that's a really good question. I think I was writing them at a time where I suppose I wanted what I was talking about to be shaped by love, or the kind of conceit, the trope, the stereotype of love represented in a sonnet, while also speaking back to, pushing back against what that might mean, and the many ways that love can take you in unexpected directions. So I suppose that the kind of essence of the answer is I was interested in the ways in which form and structure can mirror, I suppose, that experience of early parenthood, where we're told so often ways that things should be done, and how meaning should signify, in particularly what can feel like quite restrictive ways, and then trying to use a sonnet as a space where I could actually free some of that up. Does that make sense, Kyaice?
No, that did make sense. That did make sense. I definitely would have missed that when I was reading it. So it's always really nice to be able to hear that. Thank you. That was really great. So we've got our next reader all ready for us. So next up we have Rachel Bauer. So Rachel Bauer is an award-winning writer of poetry and fiction from Bradford. She's author of 2 poetry collections, These Mothers of Gods and Moon Milk, excuse me, and she's currently editing an anthology with Simon Armitage. So Rachel, I will pass it over to you if that's okay.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Kyaice, and thank you, Abi, for all your hard work on this and for including me in this beautiful book. Janine, that was absolutely beautiful, hard to follow. So I've got 2 poems in this book, and I'm just going to read the first one, which is called Flight, and it's really just about that continual process of letting go. Flight. I build your hive around my body, slip you nectar mouth to mouth, your stomach heavy with gold. I polish your wings to mirrors, rub copper stripes to a gleam. You will crawl further, brighter as I crumble, but when it's finally your time to spiral to air, do not look down for me. You were never mine to lose.
That was brilliant, thank you.
It's a fairly short poem, but the other one's really long, so I think one's better.
I have to admit, I'm maybe slightly sad that I didn't get to hear the other one, because I do wonder how you read it. For anybody that doesn't know, the other one is also called Continue on Loop, which I'm not sure you can see this, but I have read that kind of obviously in my head and struggled to kind of keep up with it. Whereas I think the other one that you just read is kind of feels so much more peaceful and does feel like maybe letting go in a really kind of nice way, which is really beautiful.
Thank you.
I do wonder, what was your kind of inspiration behind writing this one? What made you, especially considering the 2 poems as such kind of different forms, what made you
thank you.
write this way?
So the other poem is Sestina, and it's really crowded with like that labour of early motherhood. And this poem I read now is obviously, it's kind of a little bit later. And I guess as my children, I've got 3 children, and as they grow up, but even from when they were first born, I guess, and they're kind of always moving away from you, you know. I think when I talked to Abi about writing a poem for this book, I felt like I couldn't write those early poems anymore. I felt like it had to be a poem that reflected on what it means to continue, you know, that work of mothering, but also in a way that is more at a distance. So yeah, that poem is really about that. And I'm a beekeeper, and I'm writing a lot about bees and insects at the moment, so I just had to had to bring the bees in. So yeah, that's it.
No, that was brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right then, so our next reader, we have Ruth Charnock. I'm just trying to make sure that I've actually got a bio for you before I introduced you wrong. So Ruth Charnock is a writer, researcher, creative mentor, and story worker, and she's the editor of Joni Mitchell New Critical Readings, and makes work about mothering, tarot, feminism, affect, sex, and music. So over to you, Ruth. I'll disappear so we can hear from you instead.
Thank you. Thanks so much. So this is from a piece of creative nonfiction called 3 Tarot Cards for the New Mother, and it's gesturing towards postnatal depression stuff. Death number 1. What is this mothering that requires a complete subjugation of yourself? Every part of your body must now bend towards him. Crooked back from nappies, nappies, nappies on the bed. Cricked neck from pose of loving mother watching baby feeding. Which pram is better? This one is lighter, but this one has a deeper shelf. Needle in stomach roll, get better for baby. Blood thud down on hospital shower floor. Pop up on all fours so I can see you from behind. There you are. How is mummy doing today? You take a bath. Solution of tea tree and lavender swilling around your stitches. Watching yourself miniature and blurry in the tap. You realise this is the first time you've done something you absolutely, absolutely can't ever get out of. Death number 3. You go to feed a friend's cat high up on a terraced street. It's 7 a.m, but you're used to being out in the world now, though it doesn't feel like the world really, more a place you lumber round in circles until it's time for the baby to sleep again. You park the pram behind you on the steps as you unlock the door. When you turn around, it has gone, and it's like the moment at the beginning of every casualty. You'd be watching thinking, oh, don't stand behind that combine harvester. And then you're screaming and running down the hill. But even now, it's like something is dragging you back to your old life. And if you just stopped or turned around, there it would be, all laid out like a banquet you didn't know was yours to eat. The pram hits a red polo and glances off the side, coming to lie flat on the pavement. You gather up your baby. Maybe you are still screaming, but so loud that everything has become quiet. He seems fine.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I think that was such a great, obviously the entire piece is so much longer. Those were such great pieces to pull together. It surprised me that they seemed to flow so well in spite of there being kind of gaps between them and starting not at the very beginning.
Thanks. I'm glad it worked.
It definitely did work. I thought I maybe already partly know the answer to this because I've just read your bio, but I wondered what was the kind of inspiration behind it, especially with centering it around the tarot cards. What kind of obviously didn't read those parts today, but with that being the title as well.
Yeah. So the sort of frame of the longer piece is that a new mother has gone to have her cards read, and the piece is structured around 3 tarot cards. Yeah, I'm a tarot reader, so I kind of I think increasingly think through tarot quite a lot. It's not the only way that I think. Like I think through my training as a writer, I think through my training as a teacher of literature, but tarot isn't sort of mutually exclusive of those things. It just felt like I don't want to give like a super glib, boring answer, but it did feel like just a very useful thematic structure, and I like things that group things together around objects. So, and I suppose I did like the idea of a vulnerable, a really vulnerable in the early stages of parenthood, mother in an encounter with a very ornery kind of Angela Carter-esque tarot reader. I like that as an encounter where the tarot reader's just like, this is how it is, in quite a crude way.
Yeah, and that sums up the rest of the piece quite nicely. I think I would definitely say that you achieved that in lots of ways. Reading it is, I don't think that even reading the title kind of gives away what you're going to go through when you read it. I think it's done, yeah, very, very brilliantly.
Yeah, probably. Thanks so much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Right then, our next reader is Elizabeth Hogarth. So let me, apologies, get your bio so I can also introduce you properly. There we go. So Elizabeth Hogarth was the young poet laureate of Middlesbrough and has a selection of poetry published in anthologies. She attended York St John's University, where she completed her degree in comparative media. Right then, Elizabeth, I will hand over to you.
Thank you very much. So I've got 2 boys, 2 and 4. My first poem is Animal Body. It's time. She can feel the telltale sign dripping down her leg, the tightening in her belly like a punch. She chews on the last of her breakfast, her last meal for a while, and joins the herd, shepherded into the sterile stable, billowing partition panels to separate the animals, a thin veil suggesting privacy but providing none. They can all hear her braying as she endures wave after wave of pain. They snap their rubber gloves and insert fingers into a taut bucking body and tell her it's not enough. She makes noises that she's never heard before. She huffs, she groans, she brays some more. The sweat drips off her forehead, down her back, and pools at her swollen hooves. The cockerel makes a time call, somewhere between minutes, hours, or days. It's time. She's taken from the stable, wheeled away, toes dragging across the hard floor. Door, 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 bright white light, a noise somewhere between a scream and a roar. She doesn't know what animal she is anymore, only that she's a beast with a job to do. They shout her instructions, breathe, push, and her body should know what to do, should be able to do these simple things, only they're in charge. She has no control. Instinct left with the blood between her legs. She listens, she obeys, her body submits, and a child is dragged out warm and crying. She lies back with a baby in her arms and pulls out her breast. The baby latches on, smearing her with blood and placenta as her milk churns. This animal body is not her own. It was made to be a mother. And my next poem is, I was going to read the other one, but I'm going to go for, after trying to put my babies down for bedtime tonight, I'm going to go with Shark Tooth. A great white shark has a body built like a blunt torpedo and 300 serrated teeth. My little shark has 4 teeth, and every night I summon Steve Irwin and slip a nipple into his waiting jaws, playing Russian roulette as to what state it will come out in. Mottled, purple, bleeding. Those are the high stakes when you're feeding the hungry. A little shark with toothache and a bite like a nail clipper. Thank you.
That was brilliant, thank you. I'm glad that you went with Shark Tooth. I think that worked very, very, very well. And actually helped me to say what I was going to say next, which is that what really surprised me about the whole collection, and I'm not sure if you're agreeing with this, is that so many of the poems and short fiction pieces deal with what parenthood looks like so differently. I think even kind of just the couple of people that we've heard speak today, and even just moving between your two poems, you can see there are so many different approaches to kind of what it actually looks like. I wondered if you agree and kind of, I guess, maybe what you were trying to do with your poems when you add into the collection.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually took part in this as a workshop, and we went through kind of the experiences of parenthood, and it brought to me thinking a lot about how to put into words and how to describe parenthood, the good parts, the bad parts. So yeah, I absolutely agree.
Well, that was great. Thank you. So we're going to have a small pause. We're going to come back to Abi, our lovely editor, and I've got a couple of questions for Abi, and you might be reading some of your work potentially.
I will read a little one if there's time. Yeah, I will.
And then we'll go back to some more of the contributors and hear a few more pieces. So Abi, I guess you kind of have already addressed this a little bit in your introduction. I wondered if you could speak a little bit more about what brought you to doing the book, and I guess wanted to do it in this way as well, with having lots of other people kind of being a part of it rather than just writing something for yourself. So you've got some of your own work in here as well.
Yeah, I just want to, one disclaimer, we haven't got any fathers reading tonight, but we do have fathers in the book. I just wanted people to know that it's not about motherhood, it's about parenthood, and a diversity of parenthood as well, as you will see in the book. So yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think as a parent, particularly of my first child, it seems to me from talking to people, both writers and non-writers, that there were lots of experiences that were just really not spoken about or expressed. So good things, but also more difficult and ambivalent experiences. And it seemed to me that people didn't feel that they could necessarily express those feelings because they thought, oh, you know, parenthood should look a certain way. There's a kind of cultural narrative of parenthood that is pervading, and it needs to look a certain way, and therefore felt often kind of shame or guilt for not always fitting into that cultural narrative. So that was one interest. And then the other strand was just sort of seeing writers exploring, people who were already writers, exploring parenthood brilliantly through poetry and fiction and non-fiction, and seeing that happening more and more, writers perhaps turning to that subject after having children, and thinking, and some of that writing was more informal online, and some of it was more formal and published. There's a kind of combination of things. And we also ran a series of workshops, which is kind of one branch of this. So some of the commissioned writers had nothing to do with that workshop, but a couple like Elizabeth were actually part of the workshop. So I guess I was interested in kind of challenging those cultural narratives through alternative narratives, I guess. And so I commissioned this, and I said to people, you've pretty much got free reign. The theme is early parenthood. You don't have to write poems. You can write fiction, you can write prose, you can write poems, you can write anything. And what came out was a real range of really interesting work, I think.
Yeah, I think it did take me by surprise when I first came to it. I assumed, with it being an anthology, that it was going to be just an anthology of poetry. I think obviously lots of the Emma Press work is also, we have lots of anthologies of poetry, yeah. And so it took me by surprise that there was such a range of different approaches, not just in terms of content, but actual form as well.
Yeah, so I really wanted that. I mean, I write poetry and fiction and non-fiction myself. And I've never been that interested or bothered about the distinctions between those things. Sometimes what you write about wants to be a poem. It sort of feels like it falls naturally into that form. And sometimes it doesn't. And then I think Ruth's work, the tarot piece, is a really good example of a kind of structuring idea that feels like poetic prose, non-fiction, fiction, poetry. I don't want to define it. It's a set of tarot readings, and that, I love that we don't have to call it anything in particular. So I really wanted that for the book, actually, because I don't want to kind of suggest that cultural narratives of parenthood need to come out in any particular way, because that's just another restriction, isn't it, in a way. So yeah, so I really wanted that, actually, and I'm really pleased of the sort of balance and the mixture that's in the book.
Yeah, I think it does work quite well, especially when you put it like that, of it being kind of what it wants to be to some extent.
Yeah.
It maybe feels like a silly question to now follow with, but did the book, has it turned out how you expected? Did you have an expectation for what the end product was going to actually look like?
I tried to have quite an open mind, actually, as an editor. I really wanted to give, because these were commissioned as well, and I sort of cherry-picked the people that I wanted to be in the book. It wasn't an open call for submissions. It was, please, would you like to write something for me for this? And I wanted the writers to have like the opportunity to explore that territory in the way that they wanted to. So therefore, I had quite an open mind. What came out, a lot of the things that came out were quite surprising and quite raw and quite complicated. And I really like that. I actually think it's a really honest, really unusual book. I don't think there's quite a lot of stuff going on at the moment in publishing around motherhood, parenthood, motherhood perhaps in particular, but parenthood in general. But I don't think there's anything that kind of covers the territory that's covered here. And there's so many points of view offered up that I think most parents will find something that kind of recognises them and recognises their experience. And I really like that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously not a parent myself, and reading it kind of showed me things that I've not seen before. And so I imagine being a parent and reading things that you will have experienced before yourself be something extra special that you're getting out of the book.
Yeah, and I think it's probably worth saying there are a couple of things in there that came out as themes that were repeated. Breastfeeding and feeding came out, I think, and we all know, despite things improving, that there's kind of hidden physical and emotional work, I think, for a lot of parents, and a hidden challenge for a lot of parents. So that was interesting to see. And also baby loss came out in a lot of the work. So miscarriage and baby loss, which are difficult, uncomfortable subjects, but really important subjects, because I think any kind of parenthood always entails either the reality of loss or the kind of fear of loss. Love and loss are kind of inextricable. One doesn't exist without the other in reality. That's what being human's about. And so there are some more difficult pieces in there about loss that are really moving and really difficult. But I think breaking those taboos, mixing those pieces in with pieces about teething, pieces about feeding, I think that's really important to acknowledge that as part of the parental experience.
Yeah. I think we have got a bit of time if you'd like to read.
I will.
A short piece.
I will read a piece I wrote quite a long time ago, actually, on the birth of my first child, and it's called September Birth. And I guess it's about that experience of that kind of surreal experience of having your first child, and the whole universe just looks different to you. It's almost like you're on drugs or something. So, September Birth. Doors opened on a terrace street, and they came out as if to tell the weather, greeting you as the soft blood dried on your skin. Messages lined the shelves, covering the spines of great books, and storm clouds opened on the rooftops. In the weeks after your arrival, the leaves burned. Hydrangeas turned to paper, and late strawberries blushed heavy on their stems. You floated through the world in the arms of others, slept long dreams as if at sea, waking ravenous from the journey. Your faintly drawn eyebrow lifts in puzzlement or knowledge. Your skin smells of eggshells, and your breath shudders in your lungs, then settles like seed on the breeze. Your ears curl like conches. You came to tell us something. It is there with the milk at your lips, in your eyes as they track every source of light. It has been with you always in the darkness, pulsing over the live wire. You sing it out in a cry from a mouth the shape of a broken heart. We listen close, but cannot fathom your new language. We will spend the rest of our days learning it.
Oh, brilliant, thank you.
Thank you.
Glad that we had some time to hear you read some of them.
Thank you. And I just want to say, while I'm sort of on, before I mute myself again, just a huge thanks to everyone who's contributed to this book, because it was a big project and people were brilliant and answered my constant emails and my constant deadlines and my constant, please will you do this for me? Yeah, I just want to say big thanks for everybody's hard work, because bringing something together like this is feels like a lovely community thing to do, and everyone's like so busy all the time. I recognise that the hard work that's gone in from everybody's writing. So just want to say that.
Well, and thank you for everyone for being with us this evening. It's great to have so many people to read from the book. It means that I don't have to talk very much and we get to actually hear the things everyone's here to listen to. So we've got our next reader now. So next up we have Alex McRae Dimsdale. If you're ready to join us, Alex, perfect. So Alex is Director of Communications at a foreign policy think tank in Washington. She won an Eric Gregory Award in 2009, has poems published in a whole list of different places. So I'm not going to read everywhere that you've had them published, but lots and lots of poetry. So I'll hand it over to you, Alex.
Thank you so much for that nice introduction, and thank you, Abi, for asking me to put poems in this book. I was so excited. I'm going to read two poems. One of them, the first one is about my first son, who died after he was born because of, content warning, because of birth complications. And the second one is about my second son. I have 3 living kids. Yeah, so just a bit of a change of children, I suppose. Disaster. Your father and I flail in another galaxy. Like all new astronauts, we adjust to darkness. We wake at night, our shining eyes enormous as we reach for each other. We are many miles apart from you now, love. For months before your birth, we tracked your purposeful ellipse as you swung close enough to graze us. Your perihelion lasted 20 hours, a tranche of blinding minutes when we held you, the heat of your small, stubborn body burning in our arms. I tried to scorch your replica of your father's face onto my retina. Long ago, 2 months after my 6th birthday, my parents took me to a hill behind our house to see a comet in the fog. My mother said, "Remember this. Next time it comes back, you'll be very old." I remember only the sharp cold, the excitement of being up so late with the shadowy grown-ups, our breath like mist, not the star itself, a smudge of something leaving in all that cloud. Such a shame I could not carry this memory into the future, to tell it to my children, also somewhere out there, their fiery tails already directed inexorably towards me. All I'd carry would be disappointment as we turned, we and the comet, propelled from each other into the funnels of our separate nights. And then next one.
Sorry, Alex, you're muted.
I've unmuted myself, sorry, I just like klutzy. But the next one is about my now almost 8-year-old, and he wanted and still kind of does actually put everything in his mouth. Things I have removed from my baby's mouth. A well-chewed wad at the Financial Times, wedged like putty on the roof of his mouth for days until I saw the beige and black mass and panicked that it was a palate defect the doctors must have missed. My nipple as I slide a cautious finger inside the pulsing muscle of his cheek. Sunglasses, ergonomic headphones, keys, a rabies tag once attached to the dog's collar. Today, he's got into the groceries, clementines puckered with teeth marks, a raw potato slippery with spit. Absorbed in the inspection of a crinkly pack of kitchen sponges, he gums it, probes and casts the thing aside, scans around for something new, wails as the dog's water bowl is whisked away, the fridge door zips shut. Why do we crave what's out of reach? Give us secret things, new things that we can pry apart with unwashed, sticky fingers. Give us the cold interior of lilies, felt-lined chess sets, violin cases, locked gardens in leafy city squares. Give us antique pocket watches, sealed letters. Give us swimming pools with no one in them, flat and gin clear. He doesn't like the wooden blocks I bought, imagining I'd help him build the floating turrets of a childhood. What toy could compare to this thrill of the forbidden? He bites down hard on what he wants, sharp-toothed, triumphant, till I blindly fish the car keys out.
Thank you, that was brilliant. Thank you for sharing those. I think that hearing your two poems, especially next to each other, does a really excellent job of demonstrating what Abi just said about there being two sides to everything, and kind of there being the really difficult side of things and the joyful, but also I'm imagining still quite challenging of trying to fish car keys out of your child's mouth, also being another side of things. Yeah, that was really fantastic.
Thanks very much.
Right then, shall we move on to our next reader? So next up we have Rebecca Goss. Hi Rebecca.
Hello.
So Rebecca Goss is a poet, tutor and mentor living in Suffolk, and her next collection, Latch, will be published or has been published this month. Have I?
Like 2 weeks to go.
2 weeks ago, very exciting. Right, I will hand over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you. I just want to very quickly say thank you to the Emma Press for making such a beautiful book, and how nice it is to read with all you women this evening and hear your important words. And also a massive thank you to Abi. I have been a long-standing admirer of your work, Abi, and I was just so touched when you came to me and asked me to contribute to this book. And I think we all know, all of us tonight, that you afforded us that kind of creative freedom, but we all knew that our words would be in very safe, wise hands with you. So thank you for that. I'm going to read from a non-fiction, just a personal essay. That's what I'm going to call it. And it's my content warning is that it's about baby loss, and it's also grumpy, and I'm likely to swear. It's called Other Mothers, and it starts with a quote from a poem by Cheryl Luna. What does it mean to let go the envy? I am not interested in your baby. I am not interested in your birthing story, your labored gasps, your euphoric trip home from the hospital. I am not interested in the type of pram you chose, the sleep you're not getting, or the NCT bonds that you made. I will not like the photograph of your newborn baby in my timeline. I will not peer inside your shiny new pram and coo at what I see there. But if I do, it will take an effort so Herculean, I'll turn away from you in that supermarket aisle and feel winded of my every breath. Because it is deleterious to look at you, the multiple yous circled in parks and cafes, the spaces where I sit with my book and watch you lift your babies from their prams, smooth their unspoiled bodies upon your laps. I was fully expecting it to dissipate, the envy. I never thought it would remain so ferociously unchanged. Over time, my grief has morphed. It has raged and calmed and raged again. It has rendered me sleepless and helpless. It has made me articulate and strong. My grief has become both companion and foe. But envy and resentment, bitterness, spite remain as intoxicating as they have always been. I will sweep over her death. I will smooth past the frantic rush around her body and my scream, how the hands of the other mother in ICU rushed to her mouth when she saw me, how she came to find me afterwards and cried and said sorry again, how I took her hands and told her to go back to her baby. I had another child. born healthy. There is no reason to suspect she will do anything but outlive me. Therefore, the company of other mothers is company I still keep, or rather it is company I both covet and reject. School playgrounds see me drenched in toxic self-pity, standing near other mothers, working out how to interrupt a casual chat about maths homework to say, I had another child who died. How does that conversation start? It doesn't ever start. Instead, I often stand alone, waiting for my living child to rush from the building's doors, its stuffy classroom heat still in her hair as she runs to me, grateful for her warm scalp under my palm. All around me, the milestones of her contemporaries, medals for gymnastics, the SAT scores, the music exams passed. I continue to be jealous of these minor triumphs, that they were reached. Meeting other mothers for the first time causes my mind to spend several manic minutes assessing if I will tell of the daughter who died. If I think there is a glimmer of hope this other mother and I might get on, I fear such news will ruin things from the outset, that the news will not be received well, and I will feel guilty for spoiling things. Because there have been times, instances, small moments of disclosure when I have regretted being so open. My utterance to another mother has been met with an insufficient response. Any curiosity about me suddenly halted, everything about her wanting to retreat. I have felt foolish, shameful. Occasionally, I do tell another mother and she gets it. I mean, really gets it. I cannot stress how monumental that is. She hears the words, she processes them, she asks an astute question or two, she lets me see that this will not be the only time we talk about it. I want that response from every one of you. I greedily demand it. There are easier women to befriend than me.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much for reading that aloud to us.
Thank you for letting me.
Honestly, it was, really, really brilliant. I think the line that really stuck out to me there was that how does that conversation start? It doesn't ever start. I feel like this book is maybe a step in the direction to trying to get those conversations to start. And it's wonderful to have pieces like this to be a part of it, along with everyone else who's read this evening.
Thank you ever so much. I am very grateful to Abi for giving that space for these conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we have two more readers this evening. So next up we have Naomi Booth. Hi, Naomi. So Naomi Booth is the author of Animals at Night, Exit Management, Sealed, and the Lost Art of Sinking. I will leave it there because we're running short on time, so I'll just hand straight over to you, Naomi.
Thank you. I have to try and gather myself after Rebecca's absolutely phenomenal reading, but just to echo some of what Rebecca said at the start, it is such a pleasure to be part of this group of writers and to read alongside writers who I've admired for so long, which includes Rebecca. I'm going to read from the beginning of a prose piece called What is Tsunami, and it's partly about the wonder and weirdness of language acquisition. In the beginning, there were no words. You lay back in the hospital bed, stunned. The midwife went about her business in the background. There were low murmurs in the corridor beyond you, cries torn from other women at the dark peak of their own labours, and here, handed onto your chest, flesh incarnate, silent, waxy lozenge of an infant. There were no words as the baby slept, hot and larval, in the plastic box beside you. The ward was empty except for the two of you, your own small movements, tentative steps towards the bathroom, which brought fresh blood. The rearrangement of the baby's blanket were muffled and sacred. No words on that first night when they let you take the baby home and you lay her down beside you in the bassinet. Of course not. What were you expecting? An infant who exited the womb trilling with speech? Of course not. but still it was unnerving, this absence of language. In those first nights deep in the winter when you swaddled her and tried to teach her to sleep, and you listened through the quiet hours to the bizarre guttural sounds that came as she cleared her throat and lungs. No one had told you that an early baby is less like something new, more like something ancient and broken. Dark sea fish dredged from the midnight zone, sputtering water, cawing pterodactyl of a baby. The baby feeds incessantly through those long nights. She feeds and she rockets up the percentiles for weight. Her arms and legs uncoil and her belly fattens, and she no longer looks like an injured relic. Her body writhes with the desire to move. She wants to be near you always. She mews when anyone else holds her. The baby's father grows angry at his redundancy, and then he is elsewhere. The baby learns to focus her eyes on you, and there is an ardency in her gaze then that makes you think of locked-in syndrome. When the baby first laughs, it is a bleat, a burst of joy fired out into the world, surprising you both, and it finally breaks your fear of her. Then she is singing to you. Before she can speak, she babbles in long, tuneful patterns, which will make it impossible for you to remember her first words, because they emerge and recede back and forth in a wash of sound, until one day she is saying quite distinctly to you, pointing to your plate, "Mama, Isla, eat." And you are elated at the ring of her voice, sweet and forceful. And you are sorrowful too at the loss of her peculiar sonar. And I'll stop there so that I don't have to edit out the cuss word that follows.
That was fantastic, thank you. I'm sad that we're so short on time, because I would have loved to hear you finish reading, but yeah, sadly not the time today. But thank you very much for reading for us. Right then, our final reader of the evening, and then we'll be going on to Q&As. So if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A from now, and we'll hopefully get to a few of them at the end if we run out of time. So last but not least is Paige Davis.
Hi.
Hi, Paige.
I do want to preface this with, I am a scientist. I'm not actually a writer, but I worked with Abi to do the workshops, and I ended up producing my first poem since my angsty teenage years. And
right, well, we look forward to hearing it.
So this is about my now 3-year-old who is still really hard to wean. We're working on it. It's called "This Too Will Pass." His voice came as if through thick fog, marsh. Curtains opened, covers thrown aside. Each morning the screams since September. Breast milk was all he wanted, as if he were a drunk, needed the hair of the dog. Begging, pleading, she had been told, whining, "This too will pass." He's too old. He cries as helpless as a 2-day-old. It makes her stomach ache to make him wait. This too will pass. Hands on his chubby shoulder, she squeezes. It feels like clay she could mold. It will dry, become hard. Ceramic like the bones of his older brother. When she dries up, when she stops, because this too will pass. The milk stains on bras, smelling sour. His tantrums for Mummy Milky. And then one day he will have his last drop. He will roll over and fall asleep without her body to take him, lull him into the fog of dreams. She will cry, and the feeling will overwhelm her, but this too will pass.
That was great, thank you so much. I definitely would not have been able to tell that that was your first poem in a very long time, because that was really, really brilliant. If everyone else also wants to pop your cameras back on now, we'll go to questions. So yeah, as I said before, if anyone in the audience has any questions, please pop them in the Q&A. I think I should also mention, because I didn't at the start, but the lovely cover was designed by Alina Braslina. So yeah, there's also a lovely, oh, if I can find it, kind of black and white version of the artwork inside of the book. But I feel like I should mention that because I think it's absolutely fantastic. Right, we only have a couple of minutes. While we wait in case anyone does have any questions, I had one question. I do apologise because it's for you again, Abi, but it's because I'm interested in what it took, what your decisions were, and kind of actually deciding the ordering of the poems and other prose and excuse me, and fiction pieces in the collection. If I should mention that the readings that we had this evening are not the order that they are in the book. I kind of messed about with it a little bit, and yeah, was very nervous about doing that because I know that so much work goes into deciding what follows what.
Yeah, I mean, that was quite difficult, actually. That was one of the most difficult things. But I think what I decided in the end was to kind of try and take the reader on a sort of journey, and to create a balance of, I'm sorry, I've got an awful cough. A balance of the more emotionally difficult pieces to read, and kind of uplifting pieces, so that you are uplifted at the end and you go through the difficult bits in the middle. And I think that was kind of led my decisions, I think, as to how to kind of lead you through the sort of narrative.
Yeah, we didn't have the reader for the final piece, which is Tommy Brad, but it is a really fantastic way for the collection to end. I'm not going to spoil it, so go and buy the book if you haven't. Yeah,
it's very uplifting. And I started with Naomi's piece because I think it just really captured really beautifully the kind of shock of having this kind of being enter your life, and the way it focuses on kind of linguistic, and how the baby becomes sort of more human as it enters the world of language. Kind of felt like a really good opening, like a microcosm for the rest of it, I guess, in a sense. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I can imagine it was not a very easy task trying to decide which way to put them. I guess a question for everyone, so feel free, whoever feels like they have an answer. Wondered, seeing your piece alongside the others, assuming that you've kind of had a chance to read some of the kind of ones before you, or read the entire collection, did it kind of surprise you where you got put, or was it what you expected, make you change how you thought about your own work within the whole collection?
This isn't really a proper answer to that question, but I just wanted to say, as a prose writer, how nice it is to be alongside poets. I know there's a bit of a cliche, which is that prose writers want to be poets and poets want to be musicians. So maybe I'm guilty of that, but I always feel really lucky when I get to be alongside poets. So it was just, and it's still relatively unusual, I think, for prose and poetry to be collected together. So I just really enjoy that kind of formal range in the collection.
Right, we do have a question in the chat, but I'm hopefully going to be able to read the whole thing. So this is from Rebecca Kirk. So Rebecca says that they're beautiful readings, and thank you to everyone. And she's asked, wondering, are there topics and themes around parenthood that are still missing or taboo in literature about parenthood? So yeah, whoever wants to take that one.
I thought, as a psychologist and someone that studies this more, that there was more anger than I thought that there would be. So it's not about what is missing, but I thought there really needs to be something on how much anger you feel, and there is a lot, which I thought was good. And I think that there's a lot on feeding and things like that. I'm sure that we're missing something, but What do you think,
Yeah,
Abby?
I mean, I think the maternal rage thing was really interesting. Maternal rage, maternal anxiety. I think there is some stuff on postnatal depression, but there's not that much on anxiety and rage, and they were topics that seem to come up for people. The relationship between creativity and parenthood, I think, needs a bit more looking at. Not in the kind of cliche pram in the hall way necessarily, but the way in which, if you're already a creative person, a writer or an artist, that you potentially change, your practice changes, but that's not acknowledged. Like, you might want to create writing and artwork in a very different way, but you sort of professionally, that's not necessarily allowed for. That sort of relationship between your sort of professional identity, your creative identity, and then becoming a parent, I think, needs more complex exploration. I don't know whether other people in the group feel that.
That was a great answer. I guess my oh, excuse me. My final question to everyone would be, sorry, Naomi, please talk.
You might regret saying that. I was going to say that for me, it's so nice to read what I think has been a bit of an explosion around kind of parental experience and maternal experience in writing recently. I think sex is still missing. I think it's such a massive, almost kind of re-experience of puberty for lots of people after pregnancy, after giving birth. I think it's huge, and how we navigate sexual relationships after birth, I think that's massive, and for me still feels like something that we're tiptoeing around a bit in literature. I find this in a lot of the auto-fiction that I read at the minute about kind of post-birth experiences, and there's a kind of, I think, maybe a diplomatic coyness about what's going on with the relationships between adults after birth, after grief. It casts, such a different light on intimate relationships of every kind. So I think that might be the next taboo. Maybe that's just in my reading, and I'm not reading enough of the right things.
The other one that I've been sort of thinking about is, because there's a bit more of a trend perhaps for people to have babies later, the relationship between menopause and, say, breastfeeding. Women having babies in their 40s might be going towards perimenopause or menopause and still breastfeeding children, and that doesn't, those two stages of life kind of are moving closer for some people, and I think that's a really interesting, very unexplored area, I think, as well, for art, for writing, for art, I think.
Lots of ideas for everyone who's here and everyone who's currently watching about the gaps that very much need to be filled. So my final question was actually going to be, what work has everyone got coming up? Do you think this has kind of inspired you to maybe look at some of those topics that we just talked about that aren't being written about still?
Yeah, I was 100% with what you just said, Naomi, and I'm not using this to like showboat my new book, but like I do think about that a lot, and I do write about it, and for me there is a lot of edginess around it, and also around sort of representations of queer motherhood as well. And I'm not saying that like queer can be reduced into sex, but it's in there for sure. So and thinking about this piece and the sort of longer piece that it belongs to, has sort of led into that work. So thanks for saying all that. It was good stuff.
Right, well, that was really fantastic. Do you have any final comments before we close up? Anyone got anything else they want to add?
Can I say
just
quick?
Oh, sorry. No, go on.
You go. You want to go first, Abby?
No, you go. It's fine.
I was going to thank you. I just wanted to take a minute to just kind of really commend Abi to say thank you, obviously personally, but also for curating such an interesting group of writers from such a broad variety of experiences, but also experiences of writing and being published. It's just something that I think is particularly unique to this collection. So, you know, taking a risk on writers and pairing them with such established, accomplished, polished writers is just such a wonderful thing. I'm speaking on the former end of that, by the way. I'm not referring to myself as one of those points. But thank you so much. I just wanted to take the time to say thank you for that, Abi.
It's a pleasure. I just wanted to reiterate my thanks to everybody for being involved in the project, because obviously it wouldn't be there without you all. So thank you very much. It's been a really lovely experience actually to put the book together.
Right, well, to end with some thanks, thank you to all of you for reading. We had so many people, and yeah, I've had a very jam-packed schedule, but I'm really, really glad that we got to hear so many of the different voices. There are still, as Abi already said, other people in the collection who have not been reading with us this evening. And so if you haven't already picked up a copy and read it, then I would very much recommend that you do, because there's lots more, and we also didn't hear everyone's full pieces, so there's much more in it. So definitely please go and give it a read. And thank you everyone for coming this evening.
Thank you for controlling us so beautifully. I'll compare. Thank you.
Right then, thank you everyone. Bye.
Bye.